innovation showcase, innovation in design, with Doretta, who was a panelist on the previous session, and Chris. Is that correct? Over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, maybe too much. Is that okay? Good. Thanks for coming to this session. It's a 10 minutes presentation. There's a lot of information jumped in here. If I see you doing this, it means it's too much, I'll stop. So this presentation is about sustainable investing, innovation, and the role that design plays in delivering ESG goals. For those of you that don't know us, we are an architectural practice called Foster & Partners. We are a global studio for sustainable architecture, urbanism, and engineering. It was founded by Norman Foster in 1967. We have an integrated design approach, which spans from architecture to engineering, urban design, and workplace consultancies. We have over 50 years of experience embedding sustainable principles in projects and pioneering the design of net zero energy buildings. Sustainability has always been at the heart of our design approach. And resilience, sorry to go back to the resilience is a prerequisite for sustainability. And to be resilient, one needs to be credible, needs evidence, insight, and innovation. Over the years, we have broken the mold of several building types, such as the way the airports work, commercial towers, and even workplace. That was Bloomberg in the last slides. We've also worked with NASA for the habitation of Mars, with ESA for the moon, and with Nissan for the fuel station of the future. We love to challenge stereotypes, and we believe everybody should do that. But enough of us. In the last 20 years, finance has evolved towards investing, aimed at generating social, environmental, and governance benefits in addition to financial gain. We believe that finance has the potential to drive change globally. More and more companies worldwide are signing up to the race to net zero, but a collaborative effort is needed. The public sector finance is critical so that private finance can be deployed. Countries around the world are committing to a reduction in carbon dioxide emissions by 2030, and many to a carbon neutral future already. There are over 250 different building rating systems across the world, and each reports in a different way to different targets. What we do know is that these targets don't go far enough to meet the Paris Agreement, and therefore there is a gap to bridge, which is quite worrying. The gap is here. The gap is in the embodied carbon. This is because the emphasis is generally placed on operational energy. Traditionally, this is how we've always measured performance, to align with local and international building codes. However, as the grid decarbonizes, then the focus has to be on embodied energy. And that is why retrofitting the built environment is key for sustainability. So let's talk for a moment about net zero building. Why is it so important to design net zero buildings? Delivering future-proof assets obviously saves the planet, which is what we all want, but also attracts top tenants, green finance investments, and enhances corporate image. In the last few months, a couple of years, I would say now, we've had the opportunity to engage in sustainable finance conversation with different type of clients. We're a large architectural firm, so we have clients of all kinds. And we have identified the following demands. For example, triaging a portfolio, understanding stranding risks, tracking and evaluate building performance, advising on repositioning of assets, and addressing fears of assets depreciating. We figured out that via strategic design, we can unlock sustainable value financially and environmentally. And I'll show you a few of the tools that we have developed to give us and our clients some of the answers. So even though the words design is used to describe a lot of things, I think they all have actually one thing in common, which is problem solving. And it is important to know that decisions made before a brief is even written can affect up to 50% of a project life carbon. So creative thinking is needed earlier in the process. ESG reporting is now an essential part of the investment workflow. Rating agencies are shaping companies' business strategies and becoming a major force in the market. However, ESG rating agencies only offer data, but our client, they want intent, not just data. So we started using advanced building information modeling technology to deliver guidance across ESG application areas. Performance-driven design is at the heart of what we do. And to achieve that, it's important to help designers make the right decisions early in the process. Applied research technology can help with this. I'm going to show you some of our tools. These were all developed in response to client demands. So we had an issue and we tried to solve it. So this is our Carbon Designers tool. It combines operational, embodied, and transport emissions for Paris Agreement and net zero alignment. You can see here an example of the tool that we've built in-house and how it connects information models to materials and product libraries, and therefore is able to evaluate assets and compare designs as well as investment options. We use what is called a hybrid input and output approach to analyze and estimate carbon. Here is a project cost database, which is used in combination with environmental product declaration for individual elements, which include emissions associated with the construction projects beyond the manufacture of the individual materials. Spreadsheets and 3D architectural CAD packages are traditionally used as separate modeling packages. The interactive financial modeling tool that you see here can link real estate business models to architectural design and provide an interactive platforms to understand the financial viability of different architectural schemes, as well as visualize the massing changes. Okay, I'll just... Sorry, I've been told we have 1 minute, so I need to go faster. This is... It's called our stakeholder tool. And what it does, it's a bespoke tool for transitional risks in the market, reputation and policies. And it's able to design a flow plate according to the KPI and the targets that one wants to achieve. So already having in mind what KPIs you need to perform to helps us design the right scheme from the outset. I'm going to skip through all of the other slides, but I do want to show you this too. This one is how the same thinking has been applied at master plan level. So you could see in the dials, you've got different KPIs. And thanks to the BIM modeling technology, you can then start interrogating the model, tracking how your design, your proposal, then tracks against the targets that you have set yourself for. This can be applied to a building, to a master plan, and to a smaller, like let's say a city block. It's applicable to pretty much all scales. I had other tools to show you, but I'm gonna stop here. Essentially, the message that we want to give is that, as I said earlier in the panel, there is a gap to bridge in terms of reaching the Paris Agreement, but there is also a gap in communication and in joining the dots. You have people looking at ESG data, people looking at heat maps of city, identifying what the EPC properties are. You've got lots of data all around, but what you need to know as a building owner, as a portfolio asset manager, is what's wrong with your building. Almost like you need a diagnosis of what's wrong with the current asset that you have, and then an idea, a roadmap on how to how to retrofit it and therefore make it perform now and for the future, whatever, 100 years. So, as I said, these were tools that were done in response to demands, but we've got a really, really good ARD development group that is happy to deal with any challenge that comes across. So any future clients of ours, if they've got an issue or a demand for something that they can't quite figure out what it means for their building, even in terms of what it means in terms of investment, then we can help with that. I'll stop here. I'll give the stage to my colleague, Chris, who's actually going to show you a case study. Case studies are always very useful in understanding how all of this theory gets actually applied.
Do you want to take a laptop with you, Doretta?
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
I think you've got a presentation to show here.
Yeah, hello. So it's a pleasure to follow Doretta. It's not on. Okay. I think we're making a change between presentations. We're good to go now, yeah? I'm going to talk to you about this building, which is one of our first net zero buildings. One of the points that I will make is the world isn't all about carbon, and I'm going to show you here that there are other benefits in addition to carbon. So, this is in Madrid. It's a building for the industrial concern Acciona. It's a building of heritage. Okay, can you still hear me? That better, okay. It's a building of heritage. It's an urban regeneration project. There are issues of biodiversity and ecology. There's issues of how to make access to the public. What does it do to employment? What does it do to the value of the existing assets? And how does it help the climate and people? Doretta has indicated that we've got a long kind of timeline of thinking about the Paris Agreement. We produced this the year after the Paris Agreement. It's a visual interpretation, and it forced us to think about the Paris Agreement and what it meant. The United Nations were kind enough to write the foreword for it, and we give it out and they use it at various climate conferences, including subsequent COPs. One of the things I also want to talk about is circular economy, and the project that I'm showing you is the reuse and retention of as much of a building as possible. Circular economy is very important in reducing carbon, and we're now starting to show that there's a very direct correlation between the avoidance of waste and the avoidance of carbon in projects. This building goes back to 1903 and was used for the generation of town gas. When the old equipment was stripped out, this is what the building looked like about 5 or 6 years ago. Magnificent old building. In the center of an urban regeneration in Madrid. So we weren't the only people. The city of Madrid had decided it wanted to improve all of these buildings to make it a much better place for those that live in Madrid. We believe that we had a positive social impact, and that was one of the objectives that we had, because we brought back a lot of the building to new use. It was a green campus, so we've added 1,200 square meters of landscape into the site. We've eradicated at-grade car parking, and we've created 9,000 square meters of office and 2,000 square meters of amenities. This was an early collage of the building, showing some of those statistics with 300 new trees to be added. It's quite close to the train station, and approximately half of those that arrive will arrive by foot, not by car. This is something that's often overlooked when people consider net zero, and we find that if you can drive people to a site throughout its, say, 60 years of life by foot or public transport, you can halve at least, if not better, the overall life cycle carbon of a development. It's super important to actually do development near transport interchanges. So this was the old site. As you can see, not a very nice view if you were flying over it. So we retained 10,000 tons of bricks and masonry and improved their quality. We retained the primary steel structure, so taking it forward into a new use. So that's now over 100 years old. We added a lightweight, prefabricated and demountable mezzanine structure, which is office structure, and that can be taken apart and reused in the future. We used about 400 cubic meters of glulam and 1,200 cubic meters of CLT in the construction of that mezzanine. That sequestered itself about 1,640 tons of carbon. The Paris Agreement, as we mentioned earlier, that we've had to get to know and understand, basically requires emissions to drop radically and absorption to increase as rapidly as possible, so they're in balance. They're well out of balance at the moment. One of the things that we've learned over the last 10 years is as we grow up with carbon, we miss a lot of it. The shadow is a lot longer than we believe. We use an ecological footprint approach where we calculate ecological footprint to ensure the absorption, and we actually account for carbon within that calculation. It's a science-based approach, and it's the first one that we came across. Science-based Targets have just launched a consultation on their approach last week, so we've been doing this for about 9 years longer. We look for carbon in all of these places, as Doretta has already said, but I will just draw your attention to transport, commuting for the building. A huge issue. We use direct and indirect scope emissions, and we calculate the carbon in all of those locations using a hybrid methodology, which uses finance to account for carbon that we can't find in the materials. So I'm drawing it to a conclusion now. So here's a little cut-through animation, which shows that the embodied carbon here was about 7 or 8 tons. The operational carbon, which in this case was only transport, because it's a zero operational energy. It has a complete renewable energy supply, so that's only from transport. And it's a 2 degrees climate forcing building because the carbon is in balance with the Earth's carrying capacity. Those are much higher numbers than you will see in conventional analysis. As I said, it's 1 degree, it's one planet. By definition, it meets the Paris Agreement, which is the balance of sources and sinks, and therefore it's a 2 degrees project. 1.5 degrees requires better than that. So what does it mean in total? It means that if you actually take all of these things together, you can increase respect for heritage, you can increase the impact of urban regeneration, you can increase biodiversity and ecology on an old site. You can certainly make it accessible and create nice outdoor space where it wasn't any of that before for the public. Employment was increased, about 300 people in the construction process, plus the permanent employees. It's considerably increased the value of the existing asset. Now our client is on record as saying that they believe it'll have superior rent to any other building in the area. It's reduced the hard surfaces, car use and pollution. It's reduced resource use. It's reduced CO2, water and other waste streams, and it's reduced climate change. So, in summary, that's an example, I think, of where you get to if you take an overall and holistic approach. So I don't know if there's 10 seconds worth of questions or anything, but...
Pick them up. There are no questions, which is good. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Sorry it was a bit rushed, but hope you got a bit of a takeaway from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.